Let's turn now to the war in Ukraine, where all eyes are on the city of Mariupol this morning. Russia has announced a 3-day ceasefire on that blockaded steel plant, saying it will open a humanitarian corridor to allow civilians to evacuate the facility. That comes after the Ukrainian commander leading troops inside the plant said, quote, difficult, bloody battles are being fought there. NBC News foreign correspondent Matt Bradley joins us now from an aid distribution center in southeastern Ukraine. Matt, good to have you with us again today. You've been bringing us these incredible, harrowing stories of people escaping, which I'll ask you about in just a moment. But first, let's talk about the fighting there at that steel plant. What do we know about it, and do we trust this ceasefire?
Yeah, I mean, good morning, Joe and Savannah. We've heard that actually there's been renewed fighting from city officials of Mariupol saying that this assault is ongoing. Now, that's an interesting development considering that the Russians had announced last night that as of 8 a.m. this morning, which is about 6 hours ago, that they would be implementing a sort of a ceasefire to allow people, those remaining civilians of whom this is thought to be about 600, to leave. Now, this ceasefire was supposed to be every single day during daylight hours, starting today for the next 2 or 3 days. So it's troubling that there is a renewed offensive on that plant while there was supposed to be a ceasefire to allow people to get out. So no, there isn't much trust in these evacuations. The fact is that these planned humanitarian corridors had failed in the past. We did see one successful one earlier in the week, and a lot of those people ended up here in Zaporizhia, where I am now. But it looks as though, once again, that the Russians may be scuttling their own plans for a ceasefire and humanitarian evacuations. Guys?
It's just hard to hear. Matt, we mentioned you're at an aid center for displaced people. What's the situation like for people who have fled? What stories are you hearing?
Well, actually, we haven't been speaking to as many people here. We've spoken to some people last night. This is a place, though, where a lot of the aid that the U.S. and other organizations have been donating are ending up. And you can actually see over here, this is USAID donated stuff. This is mostly geriatric hygiene materials. And this stuff over here, we've got flour, we've got canned goods. Again, you can see this USAID marker here. We're seeing Red Cross, we're seeing UN boxes. So there's a lot of goods that are coming here. And all of this is mostly for people who have come from war-scarred areas around here in Zaporizhia. It's not necessarily for the residents of this city. There are as many as 1,000 to 3,000 people who come here every day. And I spoke with the organizers. They said that actually this is for essentially first-timers. You can't really come back and depend on the goods here because they simply don't have enough. City officials and other organizations are expected to pick up the slack if you are living here for a long period of time. So this facility, while, again, it serves a huge number of people on a daily basis, those are all first-timers. So the need here remains very acute. They need to get more supplies because there are a lot of people who are coming not just from Mariupol, but from the surrounding region, the border, or the line of control, as they call it, where there is that beyond that line of control is Russian-occupied area. That's only about 30 minutes away. So Zaporizhia is the center of the relief effort and the evacuation effort for the whole region. Guys?
Matt, I want to ask you a little bit about the state of the fight. This morning, Russia's defense ministry said it killed 600 Ukrainian fighters overnight in artillery strikes. Do we have any information on those? And what's the latest on Russia's progression in that eastern Donbass region?
Yeah, I mean, to answer your second question, the progression in the eastern Donbass region has been as slow and halting as it has been since Russia announced a fresh offensive in that part of the country. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, they withdrew from the area around Kyiv, and now it looks as though they're not making any additional progress, any real additional progress. And the Ukrainians, well, the Russians have seized a couple of small towns and villages. The Ukrainians have succeeded as well in pushing them back. So there's fierce fighting all up and down the eastern part of the country. Those 600 soldiers that you mentioned, it's hard to understand how the Russians have those numbers because a lot of those people have been killed, or a lot of the airstrikes that they announced overnight were hitting munitions depots and transportation hubs in the center of the country. How the Russians will be able to get in and have intelligence on how many people they killed, it's hard to know. And the Ukrainians haven't really been commenting on that quite so much. So, this is kind of maybe blue sky thinking on the part of the Russians, sort of throwing out numbers. 600 is a very round number when you're talking about artillery strikes and cruise missiles. So it's hard to know if that number is actually true But it just goes to show that as far as the Russians are concerned, this entire country remains a target, whether it's close to the front lines in the east or whether it's in the center or in the southeast where I am now. Guys?
Absolutely. We're seeing that unfold. Matt Bradley, thank you so much for your reporting.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.